Good morning, everyone. This is the lectionary commentary for February 28th, which is the second Sunday in Lent. Our texts are Genesis 17, Psalm 22, Romans 4, and Mark 8. There is an alternative reading also from Mark chapter 9. The theme, I think, this week is faith and really the difficulty of faith. The first text, Genesis 17, is one of the three texts in Genesis of the introduction of the covenant. Chapter 12, chapter 15, chapter 17, or the reiterations of the covenant with Abram or Abraham. And this particular text in chapter 17, God is promising Abraham a son through Sarah. And so the theme in those texts is the offspring, not only Isaac, but also the great number of offspring that will come from the promise of God. Psalm 22 is a psalm of praise, calling for the offspring of Jacob to praise God. So again, kind of echoing the fact that now we have the promise that was fulfilled, and there is a great nation, and they're being called to praise. Romans is Paul making his argument for justification by faith based on Abraham. Now he's referring back to the earlier covenant passage in Genesis 15, verse 6, where it says that Abraham's faith was reckoned to him as righteousness. In other words, Abraham was considered right with God just because he trusted and believed in God, not because he earned it or deserved it. And so Paul makes the argument that that's the way salvation really has always been. It's been by grace upon faith, and especially now through Jesus Christ, and believing that he is the ultimate offspring of Abraham, the seed of Abraham, through whom all the nations will be blessed and through whom salvation will come. And then we come to the Mark 8 passage, which is not readily apparent how this dovetails into these other three texts. But I believe the theme here would be faith as well. In the narrative of Mark 8 is the turning point in the book of Mark and in really the ministry of Jesus. This is the point where he asked the disciples, "Who do men say that I am?" And Peter responds, "You are the Messiah," or "You are the Christ." And, that all sounds great. Like they finally get it. He's the Messiah. But at that very moment, Jesus, it says he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected of the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. Now, this is the first of what we call the passion predictions that we're going to see repeated in this is chapter 8. You'll see it repeated in chapter 9 and 10, as Jesus now begins the movement toward the final week of contest in the temple, and then the Lord's Supper, Passover, beginning of the Passover, the two trials, the Jewish trial, the Roman trial, and then the crucifixion, and then eventually resurrection. And so Mark 8 is a crucial moment where we're moving from the public ministry of Jesus now to his moving literally toward Jerusalem and the crucifixion. But what's key here is the struggle of his disciples, and particularly Peter, who one moment says, "You are the Messiah," and is commended by Jesus. And then the next moment, when Jesus begins to predict his passion and death and suffering and resurrection, that Peter rebukes Jesus. Messiahs don't die, Jesus. If you're the Messiah, you're going to beat the Romans. And Jesus says something really weird. He says, no, I'm not here to beat the Romans. I'm here to be killed by the Romans. And this is just complete craziness. The apostles have bought into following Jesus because they have a traditional view that the Messiah is going to restore the kingdom of Israel, defeat Israel's enemies, and they want to be a part of this new kingdom. Messiahs come to beat Romans. Messiahs come to defeat all powers and restore Israel. And Jesus says, no, actually, I'm going to be killed. I'm going to overcome the Romans and overcome the world by not defeating them, but being defeated, by being killed, which is complete craziness. And yet what the disciples just don't understand is that Jesus is reading his Old Testament in a way that they never were taught, and Jews would not read it that way in the first century. That the same person who is Messiah, the expectation of Messiah in Isaiah 9, Isaiah 11, Zechariah 9, and many, many other texts, that same person that's called Messiah, Daniel 7:13, coming on the clouds to have dominion, that same person is also suffering servant. The Isaiah suffering servant passages of 42 and 49, especially 52, 53, where it says that this servant will be crucified or be killed for our iniquities. And so they didn't put that together. So here's the theme again, I think, and that is faith, that we have to trust and really believe in Jesus, and it's not easy. Abraham was an old man. Sarah was an old woman. They were being promised a child, and it's just virtually laughable. And Sarah did laugh at that. So being considered righteous, being reckoned righteous by faith, sounds easy. Sounds like, oh, that's just great. But no, we're talking about faith in some things that go beyond our understanding. For Abraham, it was to believe that somehow God was going to give a nation through him, even when he doesn't even have a child, and they are way beyond childbearing age. Here, Jesus is saying, yeah, I am the Messiah. You're right, guys, but I've got to die. And none of that makes sense. And so it calls for faith. So in the Lenten season, I believe this theme for this week is that as we walk with Jesus toward the cross, it requires faith in God that often is something we've made this too easy. We've made faith a kind of oh yeah, I believe in God. No, I mean faith in the promise when nothing around you would confirm that promise can come about. And so Paul says that we see through a glass darkly. I love that phrase because Paul uses a word in the Greek, what we call enigma. It's the word we get enigma from. And so it is a riddle. It is something that we just have a hard time even beginning to understand as we follow Christ. And I think that's the position that we're in. And I think that's what Lent brings us back to, is that this faith is not easy. And it often is in the face of the most difficult things in life, of illness, disease, death, and despair, and political mess, and family dysfunction, and on and on and on. Our own failures, our own defeats, and yet we are to believe that God is going to bring the victory. And so that's the veil of tears that we walk through as we walk with Jesus to the cross. Okay, well, I hope you have a good Sunday. We will be meeting today, and I will be moving over to the church soon to do the video. But I hope you have a good day and think about faith in this season.